Testing, testing.
Did it turn on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Welcome, everybody. We wanted to thank you for being here tonight. This is the first of 5 of our diversity and inclusion listening sessions. We appreciate you being here, and those of you who are on YouTube Live, thank you for hopping on. If you have questions during the event, please send the questions through YouTube Live, and Taylor will get those to Dr. Menifee. Mayor Fuller, thank you for having this. Eddie and the council members, David, we appreciate you all supporting this and having this event tonight and throughout the next few weeks. I will now introduce Dr. Arturo Menifee, who will be moderating.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me fairly well? Okay, is it picking up? Okay, good. I just want to say thank you all for being here. Before I begin, I really want to send a special thank you to the mayor, the city council, Lee, Taylor, Natalie, and everyone and Joey, don't want to forget Joey, and everyone that put in work to make this possible. Can we all give them a round of applause, please? A lot of work has been going on, and as you all know, the city of Opelika has been hosting a lot of these town hall-like sessions, and so they've been extremely busy. And so I'm just very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with them and very appreciative. Now, let me introduce myself. I'm Arturo Menifee, a lifelong resident city of Opelika. I'm here with Dr. Sabine Simmons. Dr. Simmons, she's from Pasadena, California, but she's actually been in Alabama for the past 17 years. She lives in Montgomery currently, and we've worked together for quite some time. Our company is Leadership Empowerment Strategies. We do a lot of consulting focused on diversity, leadership, community, and economic development. And so we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with the city of Opelika. Now, let me say something about diversity. I think diversity is very important. Is there something? Can you hear me? Okay, I thought you said something. I'm sorry. I think diversity is very important. It really impacts all of our lives. You know, it seems like race, diversity, all of those issues are kind of some issues that are always undergirding things that are going on in our communities, in our state, and throughout the country, really throughout the world. And so today, we're going to actually listen to each other. We're going to discuss some of these big topic ideas, and I think we're going to end up with a real good list of results that we're going to take to the city. This is not an academic exercise for me. I'm not up here just collecting research or data. What we're going to do is that we're going to actually take all of your comments and feedback, and then when we're finished all 5, I'm going to actually present that report to the mayor and to city council and with some possible recommendations. But they won't be my recommendations. They'll be our recommendations. And so we really look forward to you all participating. We need everybody to participate. Let me just first and foremost say nobody in here is a bad guy, bad person. We're all here to work towards one goal, and that's making Opelika better, a more diverse, more inclusive city. And so that's our focus here for tonight. What we will do is that to kind of give you a rundown of what we're going to do for tonight's session is that I'll give you a brief definition on diversity, just so we're kind of all on the same page. Then I want you all to go ahead and fill out those surveys, because before into the discussion, I really want to get your raw emotions on the survey before we get into the diversity discussion. And then we will begin the discussion. And what I'll do, I'll start kind of like big topics, like big item topics, talking about things maybe on a more of a national level, and then eventually we'll get down to like a city of Opelika type level. One more thing before we begin. I am your provocateur tonight, so my job is to provoke you. This won't be your regular, hey, how you doing, and a little answer here and a little answer there. No, I'm going to ask you some really tough questions and maybe challenge your thought process as to how we derived or how you derived at a particular answer. None of this is meant to create any kind of confusion or conflict or anything like that. But from my standpoint, those are typically the best discussions that really get at the root of the issue. And I think that we as citizens of Opelika, we're going to be better as a result to that. So I look forward to your honest participation, and I certainly welcome your comments and feedback. Okay. So diversity, very basic, very simple definition. The condition of having a variety of or different types of people, elements that recognize unique characteristics of each. The operative word is unique. We all have unique characteristics. I think that's one of the best things about diversity is that we all bring something different to the table. If everybody brought the same thing to the table, I don't think we would be as good as we are, not only as a city, but as a society as a whole. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in just a moment. But that's our definition, the unique characteristics of each, those individuals bringing that together. Okay. So if you will, oh, we can go back. Yes. Okay. If you will, if you can go ahead and fill your surveys out. Everyone, you should have gotten a survey as you came in. For those of you on YouTube, the survey is posted in the comments. If you will go ahead and fill that out right now, we will certainly appreciate that. And as you finish, if you'll just hold your hand up, we'll come around and collect those. We want to get those out of the way, and then we're going to get into the discussion. Yes, it's right here. It's still 5. Okay. We'll give you a couple more minutes to do that. Certainly appreciate your feedback. Okay. Maybe another minute, and we'll go ahead and get started. Yes, sir. Inclusion is a simple version of that is giving people ample opportunity to be included. So diversity is having a diverse workforce, but then not only having a diverse workforce, but having them to actually be included in activities and things that are taking place throughout the city or throughout various departments. So being included, almost like included in the decision-making process, might be a better way to describe it. Yeah. Yes, ample opportunity to be included, to be involved in the decision-making process. That's a better way to look at it, to be included in the decision-making process. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and start back up. I think everybody has had opportunity to finish. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, all right. So, why does diversity matter? I've had the opportunity to study diversity for so many years, and these are the four common things that I continuously see that come up all the time. Skills and talents. People come to the table with various skills, various talents, and they are able to utilize those talents and skills to help with accomplishing a goal. That's ultimately diversity that plays a part there. A new way of thinking. One thing that we found about diversity is that, you know, if you only associate with a certain type of people or certain individuals or certain groups, that certain group will sometimes suffer from groupthink. They'll only have access to certain thoughts or be involved with certain thoughts or events or activities, and so their thinking is maybe similar. But when you bring people in from various cultures and people that have experienced different things, you get new ideas, new concepts, and that leads to a new way of thinking. That's another benefit of diversity. Of course, different experiences. That goes back to the actual thinking process. Different experiences, you bring different things to the table, and then you're able to maybe resolve problems quicker or in a different fashion. We've heard the term so many times, thinking outside the box or thinking differently. Again, a lot of that is started there with those various different experiences. And then the last one is very important, cultural background, a unique cultural background. One thing that I've had the opportunity to experience is different cultures. And I can tell you that each culture is unique in itself, and it is unique in terms of how things get done. Some cultures are very particular about maybe health, and so this culture can learn about health tactics from this other culture. Some of them might be more centered or structured on governmental services or entities or programs, things of that nature. And so you can learn from this culture regarding their structural in terms of programs and things of that nature. And so again, those are just different experiences that are going to help you and that are going to bring different things to the table that really make diversity work. So out of all of my research, these are the common things that I continuously see. And this is a mix. This is a mix from business, from schools, from universities. But these are some of the things that I've seen for the most part. So positive learning outcomes. Research shows that when you have students that are in a diverse environment, those students tend to score higher on tests than students that are not in a diverse environment. So you have better learning outcomes or positive outcomes, increased exposure and engagement. When individuals are in diverse cultures, they learn from one another. Common sense, right? They learn from one another. They learn about their culture. So now, not only do they know the practices of their culture, they now know the practices of another culture. And they can take bits and pieces from that culture and implement those into their own culture. And so they benefit from that. So that's the exposure and the engagement. It improves cognitive and critical thinking. When you have people from various cultures coming together, just like with the cultural experiences, you're learning from that person. You're learning things, you're triggering things in the brain that maybe you didn't think of before. It kind of goes back to the earlier slide when I said the new way of thinking. That's exactly what I was referring to. People are better prepared for the world, especially students. Students are better prepared for the world because they're actually experiencing the world by dealing with different people. Very rarely, especially in the type of society we live in today, we're all connected, globally with the internet and social media. And so again, you're not going to only be around one type of people for your entire life. You may be for a portion of your life, maybe like in a private school or in a rural community or in an urban community. So you may be around a certain group of people for a certain segment of your life. But in terms of your entire life, I can assure you, you will be exposed to other people and other experiences, and so it helps you to be better prepared for the world. Expanded creativity and problem solving, that goes back to the way of thinking, different ideas, more resources, more thoughts, more ideas on the table. It really helps improve your problem solving, better decision making. This is a great one for businesses, increase profits and productivity. You have less turnover when there's a diverse workforce. Whenever someone is hired, they work there for a certain period of time. If they quit or if they leave, that's the cost. There's a cost there. And so the longer you can keep individuals working, keep them happy, keep them engaged, keep them feeling like they have something to offer, that's going to increase their productivity. Study after study show that the productivity of those companies go up, and those companies actually make more money than the ones that don't have diverse workplaces, which is directly related to the next item, enhanced employee engagement retention. And this is the last one is the one I really love, improve company or community reputation. Improve company or community reputation. I actually received a job offer from a university in Louisiana. I won't tell you all the name of that university because if I do, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I went to that community. I took my wife, I took my daughter, and we drove over there to spend a few days just to get a feel for the community. While we were there, the schools were not up to par, not up to my standards, not up to my wife's standards. So I could not foresee myself put my daughter in the school system that was not up to par, what we felt was up to par. But also, too, I did not feel that community was very diverse. And I did not feel that community was very welcoming. So as a result, I turned down that job. It was a great job, a lot of money. You know, we all love money, right? We all got bills to pay, take care of families. But I would not put my wife or my daughter in that situation because of that community. So because of the diversity of that community, or lack of, and because it didn't feel like a welcoming community as well as the school system, I declined that particular opportunity. So that is very important. I'm almost certain that's exactly why we're getting people to move to Opelika, because we are a diverse community. The Opelika-Auburn area is really growing right now, and I think a lot of that has to do with our diversity. Diversity works. I've showed you all the things that are good about diversity, the benefits. Here are some diversity statements. I just captured these on the internet. You know, these are companies that we're all familiar with: Google, AT&T, United Way. I got one from the University of Houston, but it could be any university, it could be any school system. I'm sure we have them here locally, but there's a focus on diversity. Everybody has a diversity statement. Everybody has something about diverse. We're committed to diversity. We're committed to a diverse workforce. We're committed to inclusion. We're committed to all of this stuff centered around diversity. So I just want to show that to you. Next slide. And on top of that, there's several symbols through our society where, again, we're promoting and focus on diversity. The Declaration of Independence. We've heard that one before. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You know, all men are created equal. E pluribus unum. That's on the money. Out of many, one. The Statue of Liberty, freedom. The White House. The White House is referred to as the People's House. For many, many years, and hopefully even now, U.S. was known as the melting pot. It was known as the land of immigrants, you know, where people could come and have a fair shot to make it. They could live or try to pursue the American dream. The 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. Several Supreme Court rulings. And really, diversity, I feel, is an American tradition. Look at all our various songs, the Star Spangled Banner, and several songs that represent America, America the Beautiful. All of that is a part of diversity. So, I ask you this question. So, based off of everything I've recently stated about the benefits of diversity, about the focus on diversity from all these various institutions and entities, about all the symbols of diversity that we have throughout this country, is there a diversity problem? Is there a diversity problem? I don't want you to necessarily answer that, but I just want you to think about that throughout my presentation today, or excuse me, throughout our discussion today, because I'm talking now, but eventually you all will be talking and participating. So is there a diversity problem? I don't know the answer to that, but people have a large role to play in the answer of that. And the answer is diversity an issue? Is diversity not an issue? But I can tell you one thing, people play a huge part in diversity and how we perceive diversity and how we'll actually do some things to accomplish diversity throughout this country. So today, this is what I need for you. As the moderator, I need for you all to participate. This is the commitment that I need for you. I need for you to participate. I need for you to have honest discussions. Again, some of these discussions may be difficult. That's okay. It's okay to be honest. We're here. We're all amongst friends. We want to hear from you because that's the only way we can really get to the root cause of what we're trying to accomplish by your honest comments and feedback. So please do that. And while we're doing that, I ask you to listen to different perspectives. It may be something that you agree with, but you may not agree with it. That's okay. It may be something that you've heard before, but you haven't heard before. That's okay. We're here to learn. And that's the next item. Hopefully by listening, we'll learn. And then last, but certainly not least, we want everybody to be respectful, be cordial. We can always respectfully agree to disagree. That's quite okay. You know, we'll still all be friends when this is over. But if we're really going to take this serious, if we're really going to get to the core of what we're trying to accomplish with this, we need to have some open and honest discussion. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I know we can handle that. Okay? Very well. Okay, so typically when I do something related to diversity, I always like to start with a simple question of asking you about your values. There's a reason for that. Because our values kind of drive the way we think, the way in which we treat other people. And so I know you probably can't see this, but if you hit the next slide, she's going to blow that up. But I just want to know, like, what are some of your values? What are some of the values that you hold near and dear to your heart? Anyone. We have some up here for you to look at. Typically, if I'm doing a workshop, I'll give you these value cards. You'll go through and you'll list them, and we'll have an entire session on that. We don't have time for that tonight, but I just want someone, just give me 2 or 3 of your values. You can just call them out. What are 2 or 3 very important values to you? I'm just wondering. Integrity. Yes, I love that one. Integrity. What are some more values that we have in the room? Some values that are near and dear to you. Family. Yes, I've heard that one a lot. I actually did a presentation today in the Wiregrass area. Family was one that came up the most. Family. What are some of your values? Just say what, man? Empathy. Yes. Understanding how others, being empathetic toward others, understanding their feelings. So we got empathy, we got family, we got integrity. Give me a few more. Someone from the back. What are you all thinking? What are some good values or values that you have? I'm sorry? You said feeding people? Okay, yeah. Caring for people, feeding people. Yeah, that's great. 1 or 2 more. Feeding people, integrity, family. Loyalty, yes. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, well, very good. Think about that some more, and if you have some more to add, we can come back and discuss that. But let's move on. But this is why I want to focus on our values. Whenever I'm doing a diversity session, I always like to focus on our values because, you know, that word that I had up there earlier about people, it really gets towards this. We can have the laws on the book. We can have Supreme Court rulings. We can have federal lawsuits. We can have all of this, but it really comes back to people. You know, people and our morality and how we feel towards one another. That's what it really boils down to, in my opinion. And so our values, this is what they do. We use our values to make decisions. We use our values to make decisions each and every day. That story I told you earlier about turning down that job in Louisiana, I was strictly using my values. Family. I was not going to put my family in that particular situation. So that was my value that was driving that particular situation. We make a deliberate choice to focus on what's important to us. So values essentially help us to prioritize. So what are you going to prioritize in your life? Those values are going to help you to do that. When values are shared, they build cohesion and they set the standards for a group. So I love the fact that we have different values in the room because the group itself will set values for other members of the group. And so the city of Opelika, you know, we have a set of core values. This organization has a set of core values, and people that are entering that group or that are entering to participate with whatever we have going on, hopefully they'll have similar values or core values. But values are important because, again, when you start thinking about someone else, how does that impact you? Are you thinking about your values? So say, for instance, if faith was one of the values up there. So if I'm dealing with someone else and faith is my value, or let's say family, I know you want to work hard for your family, so I don't want to mistreat you for working hard for your family, because guess what? I don't want you to mistreat me for working hard for my family. Integrity, same way. You know, I'm going to put in an honest day's work, and I want to be treated fairly. Just like if you put in an honest day's work, you want to be treated fairly as well. So if you look at those values, it helps keep you grounded, and it helps you maybe take a different perspective. Like, okay, these are my values, but guess what? I'm not the only one in the world with values. Other people have values too, and so they value things too. And so I always want to take a step back. I typically call that perspective training. I always want to take a step back, and I want to listen to other people. I want to understand where they're coming from. And then, like I said, I want to say, okay, that person has every right to feel the way he or she does, just like I have the right to feel like I do. I want to be taken seriously. I have a family, all of these things. And so when, especially for those of us that are in decision-making positions, you know, when we're making these decisions, I think it's very important for us to think that way. Okay, this person is a person of value. They have this, they have that. If it was me in that position, how would I feel? And so that's how my values drive me with each and every decision that I make. Just like the one that I make with my family, just like on my job. I always allow my values to kind of drive my decisions and to help with my prioritization of things that are important to me in my life. Okay? Next. All right, time to talk. So that was the easy stuff. Now, these are some of the difficult questions that we have, but these are some questions that have actually been in the media for quite some time. And I really want to get an honest answer from you. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. There's just your answer. But I think some of these questions are going to really help us to come to a conclusion about diversity and about some things that maybe we want to do here in the city. But as I stated earlier, I'll start kind of nationally with a couple of big ticket items, and then we'll kind of get down to focus more so on some Opelika issues, if you will. So my first question, and anybody can respond: what does the term or phrase Black Lives Matter to you? Not the organization. I know people have various thoughts about the organization, but just about the term Black Lives Matter. What does that term mean to you? Don't all of you all raise your hand at the same time? I'm coming to you first, and then Tom. Doing this so we can pick up for the people on YouTube. Okay. Just hold it right there. Okay. I don't think it is. Yeah, push it. Try it now. Hold it.
I did hold it.
Okay, try it.
Hello?
All right.
I
Is
got
that
it?
Get it?
I got it? Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'm still learning this technology stuff.
Yeah. At first, it was hard for me to separate the organization from the words, but I understand what your question is leave the organization behind, because it's very important to me, that thing about values,
Yes,
and this is just for me, is the first of mine would have to be faith,
Yes.
and then family, and then friends.
Gotcha.
But my faith instructs me on all of those other values. It instructs me about family. It instructs me about integrity. It instructs me about honesty and about loyalty and all of those things.
Yes, sir.
And so my faith instructs me that Black lives matter a lot, and white lives matter a lot. And I might get in trouble for saying this, because this is kind of off base, I guess, this day and time, but all lives matter a lot, because my faith instructs me that all lives were created by God, and all are important, just as important. One is the next. Now, what we do with our lives is a different story, I think, but we are all created equal.
Yes, sir.
Some of us do, and I'm not including myself, but some do a good job with living their lives, and some do poor job. And we probably all have family members who've done some of both, you
Okay.
know. But as far as just the words Black Lives Matter, that's true, absolutely true.
Could you pass that to Tom? Tom, you want to come in? And Jess, I'll get you next. Just hold it up. It should still be on. Yeah. Let's try another one. Testing. There it is.
You don't have to turn it off when you pass it. You just pass it.
Just pass it. Okay. All right, there you go. Yeah, the statement in a generic form, not even connected to any nationalism or whatever.
No.
No, I agree with the statement.
Okay.
And I wanted to say something about values too. I really should have said this earlier. I value, and I think it's related to faith also. It's a common heritage. It's a common heritage we all have. And I think the common heritage is that we're all created in the image of God. Now, God is a lot of things to a lot of people, but I've defined that for myself. But that definition I have of who this creator is impacts every relationship I have. So I don't make distinctions among people. I really value the diversity that I have personally in my relationships. And I think that idea of a common heritage really is important right now because we have too much talk about diversity. Can we have too much talk about it? Maybe, I don't know. But I think we really ought to also at the same time diversity, let's talk about unity. Let's talk what we've got in common. And all of us in this room and every human that's ever lived has that one thing in common.
Yep. Okay. Good deal. Want to try this one, Jess? Let's see if it works. I think yes.
It's on.
Yeah.
I think when you see Black Lives Matter, I think it's a basically saying that equality among the races.
Yes.
You know, where are we as a group of people? I can remember some of the sayings of Dr. King where he said, either we learn to get along as people in the world or we perish as fools. And what I see now is the lack of communication. If you have a difference with anyone, you should be able to talk it out. And it should be the same for everyone. You know, I don't make a difference in people. I think fairness, your spiritual beliefs, and the way you present yourself, regardless as to what position you're in, has a different effect sometimes. Either you choose to listen and try to make concessions for what's going on,
Sure.
or you act in other ways. So I think everyone deserves equal justice under the law.
Absolutely.
And regardless as to who you are, what position you're in, what you look at where we have no law, no justice, you have people perish. And they have differences with each other. So we have to learn that the key to this is spirituality and communication.
Good point. Do you all feel, do we have any more comments before I say anything? But do you all feel that that term or that phrase, Black Lives Matter, do you think they were saying Black Lives Matter too? Meaning that they were not receiving the type of attention that they should be, that they should have been receiving? Do you think Black lives have always mattered as much as other lives? I know with your spiritual background and training, the good book tells us to do that, right? And that's part of your core and our values. But do you feel that individuals that have used this statement, do you feel that they feel like their lives matter as much as other races in this country?
I think that it's become too politicized, and so many people who will hear it say, oh, well, that's just another expression, and say, I'm getting tired of it, because I've heard people say that, and as you say, no, it doesn't. It just shows that to me, it shows that they aren't giving any care about it. And I don't like to think that it's been politicized and that it's been, I guess, bastardized is the word for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Some of my colleagues from across the country, they essentially told me that they feel that Black Lives Matter too. I think the organization actually started after the incident that occurred with Trayvon Martin down in Florida, but of course, we all recall the tragic event that occurred to George Floyd, and how that was kind of a rebirth of the movement, so to speak. Not necessarily saying focusing on the organization, but how it really got a lot of people out protesting. And even now, I have a colleague that lives in Wisconsin, and he said this town in Wisconsin is 95, 96% white. And he's seen a lot of white people, older people, young people holding up signs that says Black Lives Matter. He said he's never seen anything like that before. And he's done a lot of research on the civil rights movement and other situations where people were protesting and engaged in maybe like civil unrest situations. But he says that he's never seen anything like that before. I was riding through Auburn University the other day, and I saw a group of white students, some black students, but primarily white students, holding up signs saying Black Lives Matter. I've never seen anything like that, not when I attended Auburn. So anyway, it just was something different for me, and I just wanted to get your take on it. Did somebody else have something to say?
I said me either, because I attended Auburn in the 70s,
Yes, ma'am.
and
Go ahead, just grab that if you don't mind. Thank you.
It should be on.
is it on?
It's
I
on.
don't
Yeah,
see
it's
it
on.
printed.
It's on. Just hold it.
Okay. I attended Auburn in the 70s, and I went back in the 80s, and neither time did I feel comfortable at Auburn. I was majoring in school counseling, and I had a professor who was so indifferent to me. I wondered how he could be in school counseling where you have a diversity of people to work with, and especially children, and have the attitude that he had in the classroom. On the other hand, I had a professor who was completely different. And it was because of those type professors that I was able to complete my degrees,
Yes.
because I was ready to quit. It's just, my feeling is, if it's not in your heart, we can have all the meetings we want.
Yes.
Because we went through this in Muskogee County when we were doing the diversity thing. Saw no change.
Yeah.
Things were still business as usual.
Gotcha.
So I don't know that all of this makes a difference or not. If we are set in our heads and we're saying one thing and doing another.
Sure. Great point you made about your experience at Auburn, and several others at Auburn have had some very similar experiences. But one of my friends, that's a professor, called me, and he had some white students in his class. And so he said he was very interested because, again, just like we discussed, that he had never seen white students that were really holding up Black Lives Matter sign. He was wanting to know why they were doing that, and how do they feel about the movement, about the phrase and everything. And he told me this, and I'll never forget. He said this young white lady said that she was doing it because she was tired of carrying around the burden for all of the oppression and discrimination that had occurred from the previous years. And she was saying that it should not have gotten here. We as a society should have dealt with that many generations ago. And she said she was just tired of carrying that burden, that stereotype of a particular person, a white person, and she didn't want to deal with it anymore. She was tired of carrying that burden. I thought that was very moving, because she was saying she can't take off her skin, she can't change who she is. We can't, black people, white people, none of us can take off our skin, and so we got to learn how to figure out how we can get along and actually work together. But you're right. I think it has to start. And that was part of my comments for putting the word people up there. We really have to reach people's heads and hearts, and to get them to start to change. And then I think we'll start to see some real change, because, again, like I said, I think we already have the everything on the law. Regarding laws and Supreme Court rulings and all these various statements say it, but then are we doing it? And I think that's what you're alluding to. So let me ask you this, another question. And thank you for the discussion, great discussion. How do you feel about the term, we talked about Black Lives Matter. What do you think about the term white privilege? I've heard that term used a lot recently, white privilege. What does that term mean to you? Have you all heard that term? Yeah. What do you all feel about that term? Is there such a thing as white privilege? There he is. Who said that? Okay, you did. All right. Can we get a mic? Hey, that's okay. We appreciate that.
I have a whole box of gloves if anybody needs any.
We appreciate that honesty. Thank you.
I think white privilege, a lot of people might get upset who are white, thinking, you know, I didn't have a privilege. I don't come from money. I come from a rural place in North Alabama that was 100% white when I grew up. I graduated with 50 white people. There was never any people of any color when I grew up, and we had an active Klan there. So that might not be something that has happened in Opelika, but I've seen some ugly, nasty racism that's not just, oh, well, black people are like this or Hispanic people are like this. I mean, they hate them. It's not just regular kind of little racism, but white privilege is something that even though I may have struggled in my life because I didn't have money or because I'm a woman or because anything else, I have never struggled because of the color of my skin. And that's what white privilege is to me. I still have had struggles. It doesn't mean that you have no struggles in your life, but I have never struggled because I'm white. That's what white privilege means to me.
Okay, great points. And I know North Alabama very well. I travel there a lot throughout the state, and so I've actually seen some things too. We can exchange some stories later on, but yeah, I've heard about some various incidents that have occurred in North Alabama. But thank you for those comments. That's very important. Thank you. Someone else. What do you feel about that term?
No, I agree with Sarah. I mean, I never grew up thinking my whiteness gave me privileges because my parents told me that you respect everybody and you consider everybody. This is a small Georgia town in the 50s.
Sure.
And so I think the way I was reared and the way I was taught didn't give me they didn't communicate to me you're privileged because of your whiteness.
Right.
So I think it has a great deal to do with family life. I think somebody brought that up a minute ago. You know, I think the way we're taught, the way we're trained.
Yes.
But this white privilege idea is here, no doubt about that, with some families and individuals who think because of their whiteness, they deserve these particular privileges, or they deserve this particular promotion, or they've got this particular uniqueness because of their ethnicity.
Yes.
Who's promoting that? Who's promoting that out there? Is it university? Is university promoting that? Because white students get more privilege than black or Hispanic or Latino or whatever?
Yeah.
Who does that now? Does the city of Opelika give preferential treatment and hiring because they're white and over others that are minorities?
No.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, what about our school systems? We promote teachers, we promote students, we group them because of their whiteness, because they may have, you know, more skilled or whatever. Who does that?
Yeah. Okay. Good point. We're going to talk about some additional research and
I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
we'll talk. No, that's a good point. Yes.
In response to that, I think in white privilege, it's not all about money. I think it can be black or white, and they may be coming from the same situations. It may be, yes, I'm poor and you're poor. But then when the decision has to be made of a choice or a job or a position, sometimes that whether you're white has oftentimes gave you an upper hand. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it has anything to do with money. And as far as like with school systems, for instance, if my child can go through kindergarten to at least 7th grade, 8th grade, and has never had a black or a minority teacher, then that gives the impression that it may be something with privilege. Or because my child or my grandchild or whomever, if they never saw a teacher that looked like them. But it's no qualified, it's all the other teachers from kindergarten to 8th grade, then that's something, says something. And like you was talking about, you should get people that's qualified or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
you have to put an effort out too. For instance, if I'm running for an office, normally I might not want to invite somebody to a meeting or something. But if I want their vote, or if I want something that will benefit me, then I'm going to put an extra effort. I'm going to knock on your doors. I'm going to ask. I'm going to say, can you come to this meeting? Can I come to you? I'm going to shake your hand. I'm going to stop you in the street. I'm going to take one of my flyers. So I think that we have to put forth an effort as well. So if we don't want privilege to be perceived, not saying that it is or isn't, but we have to do that, in my opinion.
Excellent point, yeah. To your point, great points, everyone. But I went to college, undergrad, with a diverse group of students. Did a presentation, and one day after my presentation, this white young lady, I won't call her name, but we're still good friends, but she came up to me and she was like startled that I could conduct the presentation. These were her words. She was like, "You did a really good job." And I said, "Well, thank you." And she just kind of kept on, like, tell me a little bit more about your background. And at first I was like, like, what's going on here? But then eventually, after talking with her, I realized she had never, ever been in a class situation with an African-American person, period, until she came to college. And so she was asking me about my background. And so at first I was kind of like, is she trying to make fun of me? Like, what's going on? But then I realized she was just trying to understand. And so she personally approached me and we engaged in conversation. And I think she learned a lot from that because she said, "Hey, look, I'm a white person." She didn't say she lived a privileged life, but she said, "I've never been to school with African Americans or Hispanics. It's been only white. And so this is like a learning experience for me." And so I appreciated that because I think she learned a lot from that particular situation. A lot of the schools, though, especially not here in Opelika in the Auburn area, but a lot of schools throughout the state, they are somewhat segregated. A lot of the public schools will be primarily black, and a lot of the private schools will be primarily white. And so I have seen that as I have traveled throughout the state. I want to read this statement to you, though, because actually they were working on this way back in 1988. Peggy McIntosh, you all have probably heard of this before, but she actually wrote something, short essay called "White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack." And ultimately, this is what she said. She said, it was originally published in 1988, and the essay helps readers to recognize white privilege by making its efforts personal and tangible. And so this is what she said, her own words. She said, "For many, white privilege was an invisible force that white people needed to recognize. Meaning white privilege, was being able to walk into a store and find the main displays of shampoo and pantyhose were catered towards your hair type and skin tone. It was being able to turn on the television and to see people of your race widely represented. It was being able to move through life without being racially profiled or unfairly stereotyped." So that was her definition of white privilege. And again, this was way back in 1988. So anyway, just kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Because again, the idea here is that Black Lives Matter, we're trying to kind of see what's going on with that. White privilege, what really is that? And I think by us having this open and honest discussion about it, that's going to move us closer to where we need to be in terms of a community. So, did I put my list down? I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Next one, okay. Let me ask you this one. Why is this country so divided right now? I know it's the political season, but we have elections every 4 years anyway, right? But on a national level, why do you think this country is so divided? And it seems like, according to some of the reports that I've seen, I don't know about you, but hate is on the rise throughout the country. We've all heard the planned attack on the governor of Michigan, a female. What are your thoughts on why this country is so divided, and why are we so upset at each other, and not necessarily just upset, literally hate each other? to the point that we're going to try to go and kidnap the governor of Michigan and overthrow the government of Michigan. What are your thoughts on that? Just wondering.
People are scared of black people.
Can we give her a microphone?
Some people are just plain afraid of black people.
What
I-
is it?
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about the fact that when I was about 7 or 8 years old, a little blonde white girl walking along the street, and a black man was told to get off the street and get out of my way. And that was totally unfair, and that was the first time I realized that there was something different in my life and his life. And so he has his children who now resent the way that he was treated, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, yeah. What is it about black people, again, just throwing this to anyone, that is so fearful? What do you think? Do you think it's over a period of time? Do you think there's been some type of incidents? What is kind of getting us to that point that they fear black people?
I think there is a prejudice that comes from lack of information.
Okay.
A lot of times when you don't encounter people on a regular basis, you have the thought that that person is dangerous because of what you've heard. And so I think as a society, to go back to that other question, why we hate each other, we don't know each other. And it's hard to love something that you do not know. So if we don't take the time to let our guards down, open up, and talk to people who are different from us, listen to them, and empower them to be able to speak to other people, hey, this person is this way, and talk to the character of people instead of their skin color. You know, I mean, of course, Dr. King said it, you know, judge people by the content of their character, but I think we really need to get back to thinking about how we can let those barriers be down, like Tom said. Like, let's start to know each other, and then we can begin to not prejudge and have those fear tactics being known. You know, if I read an article about someone that I don't know, I'm more likely to believe it. But if I know that person and I read an article about them, I can judge my experience versus what was written.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and you brought up a quote about Dr. King. He also said that we fear each other because we don't know each other. So that's a very true point.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There was a march in Opelika several months ago.
Okay.
There was a march in Opelika several months ago, and they ran it on the front page of the paper. And they interviewed, I think, one of the persons that maybe organized the march or something. And the quote that came out of this person's mouth was, "Dr. King is not here." Now, I thought that was a gross disrespect for a man and others with him that led in a radical assessment of our culture and how we treat each other, and he did it the right way.
Yeah,
He suffered for it,
he did.
you know,
Yeah, he did.
but he is revered to me today. And listen, we don't need to lose that heritage now. We don't need to let those who've got another agenda just take Dr. King's influence and his teachings and his writings and everything, just put it to the side and say, oh, that was just history.
Yeah.
I just want to comment on that.
No, that's a great point. When I was working at Auburn, I hosted this leadership conference, and I had the opportunity to have Ambassador Young, Andrew Young, who worked very closely with Dr. King, and I actually went to Atlanta and I spent the day with him, and so very, very moving experience for me. But he was just telling me about some of the situations and just how touch and go a lot of them were, and they didn't know if they were going to make it to the next day because of the situations they were in. I had a colleague that I worked with. We were good friends. We were kind of, you know, he thinks differently than I, but we were still able to work together. But he had some negative thoughts of Andrew Young, but because of things that he had heard as a youth growing up in the South. And so he actually had the opportunity to meet him. I introduced him to Andrew Young. They sat down, had a conversation, going back to what you said earlier, and they talked. He left that conversation and said, I was absolutely wrong. This is a man of God. He is a great guy. And from that conversation, he said that you could tell his morals were in the right place and his heart was in the right place. And he admitted to my face that he was absolutely wrong. He said he had a totally different perspective of him once he had the opportunity to sit down and to talk to him. So very important. Yes, sir. And then we'll go ahead.
I wanted to address this young lady's, what she said just a little, what's your name?
Raven.
Yeah, okay, well, listen, I thought what you said was right on point. But I think it's easily said and hard done, is that we need to get to know each other, you know? And I long for that. I mean, I long to have a black neighbor that we can be in and out of that home, and they can be in and out of our home, and we're not black and we're not white, we're just people. I long for that. But the issue is, how do we get that done? And my wife and I led a young adult Sunday school class at our church for like 15 years. And over that period of time, we had maybe 5 younger black adults who came to our class. We were exhilarated about that. But they didn't stay. And we had maybe 20, 25 in the class, and this was the only black face in the class, I'm sure, and they were all young women. I'm sure that they felt uncomfortable, feeling like, why am I the only one here this like this? And I can tell you for a fact that we didn't try to treat them specially or special, but just tried to include. There's a word, I guess, inclusion.
There you go.
We tried to include, to have them in our home on multiple occasions. We had an LGBTQ person in our home that came to our class because that was a person, you know, but none of them stuck. None of them came back. And I've tried to analyze that in my mind and say, well, why is that? You know, because I don't want it like that. And what I came down to in my mind is that we didn't have commonality of interests. Like on weekends, what I like to do, well, Mondays and Tuesdays are weekends for me now, but it used not to be that way.
Okay.
But when I had time off, what I like to do is watch a football game, cook some hamburgers on the grill, you know,
Okay.
and do things like that. Well, we went and visited with these young ladies, and they came from just a different background. It was different, you know. They didn't watch football on weekends because they didn't have a television set, or well, they had a TV usually. But the deck was falling in. It was on a real, this one I'm thinking about, it was in a real tough mobile home park. And so there wasn't just a lot of commonality and interest, and you can't force that, I don't think. So how do we accomplish that? That's what is the question in my mind. So I appreciate what you said.
Good point. I think,
Real quick before I pass this to Ellen, going back to what Raven said, I had some training, some diversity training. It's been many years ago, and I can remember them teaching me the words, it's broken records in your head, meaning it's records that you are taught by your parents, your grandparents. And I was raised in a godly home with parents who were not racist at all, but I did have grandparents and aunts and uncles that put stuff into my head, you know. So now I stop and ask myself when I start to judge or I start to question something, is this just a broken record? So that might be a tool that you can use to ask yourself when you're in situations, even if I get scared, I might say, is this a broken record? Do I really have a reason to be scared? So just wanted to share that.
I think,
This is a whole different, this goes back to your question of why do we hate each other.
Okay.
And I think my opinion is a lot of it has to do with the media and how we're influenced by that, because the media doesn't care if we like each other or not. They just want us to read the next article. And I think if we would not let ourselves be influenced by what we read, but be influenced what we actually see around us and the people that we know, it would make a difference.
I would say the media and social media. Social media is really playing a big part now because some people, that's where they get their news from now, social media. Did you want to say something, sir? Or you just, okay, go ahead, Jason.
Well, you basically have to look at the facts. You have to look at where we are, and you have to search yourself. Where are you in your heart?
Yes.
Is it different because I don't like white, so they don't like black? Or are we not communicating enough with each other to find out?
Yeah.
I mean, you looking at 50 years ago, all this stuff happened, and it was hatred everywhere. And Dr. King and the generation with him stood up for the rights of other people, for all of us. And everybody benefited from that. And we should not be thinking about how to mess that up, even though it still exists today.
Yes.
But it all boils back to the lack of communication. I think you got to learn each other's culture. I think you have to learn to live together, and I think you have to learn to communicate with each other.
For sure. Absolutely. We'll move on for the sake of time.
Yeah,
sir.
so in my opinion, social media, besides the media, is going to be the death of all of us.
Okay.
And,
It's pretty serious, right?
and in my opinion,
Yes.
in our country, our computers and our phones have caused us to be unable to disagree with each other. And, because we don't do a face-to-face, we don't, and if you jump on there, then you're immediately an expert, and you may be the village idiot, and it's just where we are, but there are a couple of things that are just my opinion.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Number one, is not all people fear black people.
Yeah.
We just don't.
Okay.
The other thing that I would say is, like this nice lady mentioned a minute ago, this is a matter of the heart, in my opinion.
I agree.
And so far, all anybody wants to do is teach or educate or preach to or whatever you want to call it. But until we start talking to people's hearts, someone said to me one time that the Jesus in me needs to see the Jesus in you. And if it gets to that, all this other stuff it'll fall by the wayside.
It'll fall, yeah. Fall by the wayside. All right, and she has to come in. Okay.
I changed my glove.
Plenty.
She's serious about those gloves.
So one thing about social media, I was addicted for 11 years, and I got cancel cultured this year in my business. If you don't know what that means, Google it later.
Yeah.
And it really broke my identity. And prior to that, I had started marching with Black Lives Matter and become a part of the movement. And all of my family just came up against me, and I was ready to axe anybody. If I think you're a little bit racist, you're out. You're out. Not going to that family reunion. Not going there. You're not using that business.
She's serious.
And I was so mad. I just walked around with such a heavy hatred, ready to axe everybody. And I didn't realize what a detriment that was to my life until I left Facebook, and I haven't logged in months. And I started realizing a couple of truths that I wanted to speak to is that the difference of interest you were talking about, like we don't have a lot in common, and this thing of I don't see color, I'm colorblind. I realized how not healthy that is, because it's like we're uncomfortable. We want to make people who are not like us. Like if you act white enough, then I'll be your friend. Or if you act the way that I am and have my interest and we can talk, then we're on the same level. But what I'm learning to do is to see people where they are and like their culture or their background or their history, even though it's different from me, just to listen to someone who is different from me, because that makes me a more well-rounded and diverse and inclusive person. To accept someone who is not like me, it actually makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
To learn about someone who is not like me and to go off of that and to actively try to create relationships rather than just, we got to destruct the racism and the hatred.
Sure.
But how am I creating meaningful things? What minority-owned businesses am I actively putting my money into? What relationships am I cultivating? And that kind of thing. So I just wanted to say that in that token of thinking, well, I don't see color, and I'm just going to be on that all the same thing and being hateful on social media, and just to be consciously aware of that activity, because you don't realize you're doing it. I didn't realize I was doing it at all, and I walked around with a very heavy heart. But been freed from Facebook, praise the Lord.
No, good point. But going back to the hatred question, in my time with Ambassador Young, I asked him about that. I said, do you hate the people? Because he was telling me about some times when he was marching and he was leading a group of women, and these guys just came up and just beat him and hit him with sticks, and he said he would get up, dust himself off, and he said he would tell them that I still love you. And I said, but how was you able to do that? And he said, for him it was easy. He said that his dad was a dentist or a doctor. I think he said a dentist. And he said he would see people that were hating him, they had a sickness or illness. And so it was almost like they couldn't help themselves. They were, in his words, sick, and they needed some assistance or some help to see the love or to see the good in other people to remove that hate. Because to him, hatred was like a disease. And he said that's why he couldn't hate anybody, because if you hate someone, it would like eat you up on the inside like a cancer. And so he just preferred to love people. Even if they didn't like him, he preferred to love them. And he didn't have to carry around that burden. So that allowed him to keep a positive mindset. And he said a lot of people that were beating on him, they came back years and years later and apologized. And he actually has a relationship with those individuals. But he just said that the hating did not work for him because it would eat him up on the inside. And he had too much energy to focus on love instead of worrying about hate. So, but let's move on to a great discussion. One more national big type discussion, and then we're going to get down to some things at Opelika, and then we're going to talk about some possible things that we can do, because ultimately that's where we're going. If you don't mind, Captain Healy, can I ask for your response on this one? I think we're all probably here because of the George Floyd incident. Just as a police officer, what were some of your thoughts when you witnessed the event that occurred to Mr. Floyd?
I've thought a lot about this, to be quite honest with you. It was the first time that I can remember in my life as a police officer where the entirety of law enforcement came together and stood up and said, that was wrong. Okay. Excuse me. We get into, not just in our personal lives, but our professional lives, where it's easy to start trying to be defensive of things that people say about us. And this was a time, again, in law enforcement, and I think Jesse would probably maybe even agree with me. I guess I need to ask him that, but where you saw it didn't matter if it was local police like us, if it was national, if it was state, big departments, little departments, the International Association of Police, the FOP, everybody came out as a united front as police and said that type of behavior is unacceptable. It's gone a lot of different ways from there, but that particular incident was absolutely unacceptable. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's somebody in our town, somebody anywhere. Nobody should be treated that way. And it was good to see police as a whole come together and finally stand up and say enough's enough. We got to do better.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was talking about. So that was an incident that did not occur here, but you saw the implications across the world, not just the country, across the world that it had on local police departments that had nothing to do with it. But now they had to be prepared to be able to respond to a situation if it occurred in your community because of this one incident that occurred in Minnesota. And so it shows you just how connected we are and how things do tend to, even though it may happen on a national level with social media and things of that nature, now everything is so connected that if something happens in California, hey, we're hearing about it in Opelika, the next second, and we may need to be prepared for a situation because this happened in Atlanta or this happened in Nashville. I mean, the world is just so connected now. And so I appreciate those comments. But again, we were talking about earlier about African Americans, some people being scared of African Americans. It appears that over the course of history, not just now with the recent incidents, and we have a lot, right? We can go down Breonna Taylor, and several others that have occurred just this summer. They've had incidents with the police. Is there, and again, just from your perspective, and again, we're all good guys. Nobody's, we're not picking on anyone. I just want it from your perspective. Is there an apparent problem between the African American population and police in general? Not any specific incidents that you've been involved in, but just in general throughout the country. Do you feel there's an issue between African Americans and the police department?
I think it's a problem of trust.
Okay.
It boils down to trust. Whether people trust us as the police, whether we trust those people as citizens, I think it boils down to trust.
Okay.
So I would say that there's obviously, a trust issue, and that's, I know you didn't want to talk yet specifically about here, but that's kind of one of the things that we're really looking at as far as our department is how do we build that trust? How do we make deposits in that trust bank now so that if there is some unfortunate type of incident that happens, how do we keep things from falling apart like they have done so many other places? And I think when we look at here in Opelika, some of the things that happened after the George Floyd incident, we had people that felt comfortable to come and speak their mind and protest and say the things that they wanted to say. And we didn't have, on our side, as far as the police, we didn't want to infringe upon that, And there was that trust between us here in this community that I think has been built. And we don't ever need to forget about that. We need to keep making those deposits in that trust bank.
I agree. Jesse, as an African American, you've been involved in police work at the local, state, and national level. What's your take on African Americans and the police throughout the country?
I think basically it was the worst that I've seen in all my career. What happened to Floyd? I think that a lot of good, solid police officers and on every level has been punished basically for one bad person making that situation worse than what it should have been.
Sure.
I think that all of us would agree that it was wrong. All of us would agree that he needs to be punished for what he did. And it goes back to what we always tell citizens: if you see something, say something. That goes especially for us. If we see one of our officers getting out of line, we need to put him back in his place.
Yeah.
We need to let him know this is not going to be, we have zero tolerance for this.
Gotcha.
Because every day that we put our lives on the line for citizens that pay our salaries, that make our livings, and we owe everyone that respect. We have to do the right thing. And if you have any intentions of doing that which is not right, I can tell everybody it's not a place for you in law enforcement. Because you, at 21 years old, people hold you in the highest esteem that they can, because their lives is in your hand, even though the human side of you might say different, but if it tell you different, don't be in the profession.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that one thing that I can say that happened with us during that time from the federal level, we all reassessed what happened. We had to live with what was going on, and we had to be very professional about how we responded to that incident. And that was for everybody had the right to protest.
Sure.
Peaceful protest is allowed.
Yep.
But everyone did not have the right to destroy property. And at the same time, you create violence with violence, and it's not going to work.
Right.
And I think when you look at where we are in the Middle District of Alabama, it was an outstanding job done by law enforcement. They were very respectful to the citizen. They opened their minds and listened to what was causing the problem. What do you have to tell us that we should do better? You have to critique your situations and do better. Don't make the same mistake twice. Whatever you see, move forward and learn from it, and learn not to do it to anyone else.
Yeah.
So I agree with the captain, what he said, and I have the utmost respect for how we were able to handle our situations throughout Alabama. We didn't have the problems that Portland had. We was involved in these situations. It was not a true representation of all law enforcement officers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, hey, let's just put it out there. The police, they have a very difficult job. If you see somebody in there and they're doing something, you can go out, you can dial 911. They can't turn away. they got to go in. You know, they have to deal with the situation and bring it to some type of resolution. And again, everybody in here has they have the right to go home. They have kids. They're, police are people just like we all are. But coming up as a teenager in this city, again, and I'm sure some of you all have probably had this conversation too. Again, the perception of police at that time. My mom would pull me. I have 3 brothers. There's 7 of us, 4 boys, 3 girls. She would pull all her boys together and she would tell us how to conduct ourselves if we were ever stopped by the police. I don't know if you all have ever had that conversation, but she said, look, have your hands here, go ahead and have your wallet out, already have your license and registration out, and don't make any sudden moves. I mean, again, this was a reoccurring statement that my mom would make to me because, again, she would always tell me, your goal is just to come home every night. And again, regardless of the situation that's going on, always be respectful. And she said that even if they, and I remember this just like it was yesterday, she said, even if they do something wrong to you or disrespect you, are disrespectful to you, she said, never respond. You tell me about it and then I'll handle it through the proper channels. I had that conversation. Did any of you all have that conversation growing up? Yeah. I see a lot of people shaking heads, right? Yeah. So I just think that, again, as a community, and I love the fact last week, we had the press conference with Opelika Together. I think that's going to yield some positive results. I know they're just getting started and they've already made 1 or 2 steps. And so I think that's going to yield some positive results. But
Arturo, you're at about 6:30.
6:30,
Just
okay.
letting you know.
Okay, appreciate the time. Let's talk about issues locally. Have we had any issues locally regarding diversity that you would like to comment on?
I just want to ask you, because this is all nice and well, because everybody's nice and honest and real respect each other.
Sure.
But I've got friends who, they have the, black and blue, they support the blue, they have the blue and black ribbons. And then if you talk about it and say, well, how do you feel about Black Lives Matter? And they're very, very belligerent. And they say you can't support the one and the other, and I say, yes, you can.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to have some discussion on that. Because I really appreciate what the police doing, and I just don't, have any gripe against anything like that. And I just think that it's wrong for us to be separating the two and say you can't support one or the other.
Yeah.
And it's like they say, well, yeah, there's a difference. And I say, no.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because I think I was reading somewhere, and actually my colleague confirmed, because again, I work with people all over the country, and they were saying that someone was holding up they were wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, a white person, and a group of individuals called that person a very derogatory word just because they were wearing that shirt. And I've heard of other incidents like that with people holding up various signs. So what is your take on that? Can you support both? Personally, I believe you can. Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. I think they're saying that Blue Lives Matter for the police officers and things like that. So how do you all feel about that? Can you all support both? I would say yes, right? That's a simple answer. I would say yes. So I think it's just really about that person.
See, I tell you, I can't support an organization like Black Lives Matter. And the reason I can't, it hadn't got anything to do with skin color, nothing about skin color. But one of the tenets of the Black Lives Matter organization is the destruction of the family unit. It's on the website. I took it down just recently, but it was on the website. I think that's wrong.
Okay.
I think that family is the basic building block in our country. And so if we're going to work to destroy the basic building block in our country, the family, I can't support that.
Yeah. Well,
And it hadn't got anything to do with skin color.
Sure, but that's exactly why I didn't say it was an organization. That's why I'm talking about the slogan or the movement itself, not the organization. I was trying to separate it too. Yes, absolutely. So how are race relations? Because again, I know we're getting short on time, and I want to keep this thing moving. How are race relations here in the city of Opelika? Many of you all have been here for several years. How would you say race relations are in the city? Have been in the city? Maybe while you're out shopping, interacting with city personnel. How are race relations in your take here in the city? Yes, sir. Get a mic.
large number of Hispanic people who live in our community. And, you know, it goes back to our faith. Faith for me is really, really important. That teaches me to respect everybody, regardless of regardless of the economic situation. You know, one of my brothers said, we were born on third base, meaning we had two parents who loved us, who were Christian, who helped us get an education. So many people, regardless of skin color, regardless of their ethnic background, aren't born on third base. In fact, they didn't get to first base. And so we have to be real careful. I've sat here and listened to us talk about the black-white situation. I keep thinking about my Asian friends, you know, my Hispanic friends. It's across the board, and so we want to be inclusive to everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really, really important.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah. And we were not omitting Asians and immigrants. I'm sorry, you were not finished. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The other thing is look at what's happened to Christianity in our country. And to me, that's a very, very important part of what's happened to our country is faith in God has deteriorated so much, and we've gotten away from those truths about love your neighbor and things that we would learn from being a Christian in that respect that we have there.
Sure. Good deal. Oh, no, we're not omitting Hispanics and Asians. These were just some of the more pressing issues that were current, but you're absolutely right. So we certainly value all people. We value the Asians, Native Americans, Hispanics that are a part of our community as well. We certainly want to include them in the discussion as well. So, okay. Anyone else on race relations in the city? How do you all feel about race relations in the city? Do we feel they're okay? Pretty standard, great, excellent?
I think, to take a page from Mayor Fuller, we got a lot of work to do. We've made strides, but I think the work has to be done in us making sure that we put it at a priority. The things that we are dealing with now are based on several generations of different perspectives. So we have to not only respect and honor those generations and those perspectives, we have to find a way to bridge a gap so that people's feelings, thoughts, and intents are heard and understood. Because some people, it's hard for them to make an adjustment on what they grew up knowing. So, I mean, if I grew up eating Fruit Loops all my life, that is my favorite cereal, and all of a sudden you tell me that the best cereal in the world is Special K, it takes some mental change for me to adjust and start to eat Special K. There's no flavor to it, no sugar. You know, I mean, you have to adjust your mind to any change. And so if you've grown up with a certain mentality, and in Opelika specifically, there were a lot of years where there was segregation. I mean, I think there were from what I heard, I wasn't here at the time, I was just born in the 80s, but there were some city buildings that were still segregated as early as the 80s. And so that's well after civil rights, but you still have people who live here now that were working here in the 80s, who lived here in the 80s. And so you have to kind of figure out how to bridge that gap to deal with the feelings that they may have felt, how they experienced the schools integrating. All of those stories come into effect, and I think if we don't discuss those and let those experiences be vocalized, we won't get to the root of why people feel the way they feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the previous gentleman's comment, you know, you was asking about Asians and Hispanics, especially in the South, the white and the black issue has been, you know, so prevalent for so long. You really got to address that. Not to say it's more important than any of the other issues, but you have got to address that before you deal with anything else, because again, it's such a big issue. And so that's one of the reasons why I was focusing on these pressing issues. But again, like I said, I certainly agree with your point. I think it wasn't Opelika, but I think, was it Auburn that used to have the Old South Parade or something like that? That really got a lot of people stirred up. I think it was going on even in the 90s. I want to say 93, 94 is the last time they had one. But it was a very big parade, and a lot of people in Lee County, I don't know if they attended, but I know it certainly impacted a lot of people. You know, people were still telling me when they realized I was doing this, they were recalling some incidents they had witnessed surrounding that particular parade. Okay, so after all the stuff that we've discussed, we've talked about feelings and thoughts and values. We made some suggestions. You've had the chance to now listen and hear from other people. What are some of these potential solutions? It sounds like we need to maybe to try to communicate better, to try to learn, to know more about each other, various races. What are some potential solutions to some of the things that we've suggested here tonight that we can do? And when I say that we can do, that doesn't mean that we're going to get up and do it, but just what are some things that we can throw out that maybe we can start to consider to do as a community?
I think one is that to have an open communication. I think when you talk about this issue on race relationships in smaller groups, you get honest answers. The larger groups has a tendency to hold back because of they don't want to offend anyone.
Yep.
But even if your answer offend people, they still need to know what that answer is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So as far as Opelika, I think that we've made a lot of positive strides. What you do and what you are in any city gonna have a reflection on your leadership. And the leadership of this city has been open-minded. They've been involved in trying to figure out what is it that we can do to make the community good and better.
Gotcha.
Now, we don't get to 10 tonight, but we're getting there.
Okay.
And the reason we're getting there is because everyone see what the problem is. Not here in our city, but open across the nation. And one thing you don't want to do is be what another city is. You want to be better. You want to do the right thing.
Be better.
You have every walk of life walking through the streets of Opelika today.
Absolutely.
And for the future. So I think with professional people and professional attitude and open lines of communication will be the key to these diversity problems.
Okay.
It won't solve them, but we'll be open-minded and we can make it better.
Okay.
I just kind of want to build on that. I think one of the things that we can do to help that communication is humble ourselves in front of each other and
That's a great point.
be willing to accept when you're wrong and admit when you're wrong, because none of us in here are perfect, and it's important, I think, to open those lines of communication that when somebody calls you on your stuff, that you're like, you know what, you're right. That's not appropriate. That's not.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to kind of help progress that communication.
Yeah.
And we can't, whether it's us as individuals, whether it's me at the police department in my position, whether it's us as a city, we cannot be satisfied with the status quo. Where we're at today, even though, like Jesse said, we're not at a 10, but maybe we're rising up the ranks. But you know what are we, when we get to 10, are we just gonna, quit and go home? No, we can't stop.
Right.
We can't be satisfied with that status quo. We gotta keep trying to get better as individuals, as organizations, as a community, and don't ever be satisfied with where we're at. Let's always strive to be better.
For me, I get a chance, very honored, to travel all throughout the state. I work with a lot of different leadership groups. And I love leadership groups because, again, that's what I do, leadership development. But there's one false, I would say negative of leadership groups. Sometimes they tend to think that the only people that can be involved, I'm not saying this about any particular leadership program, but they sometimes think that the only people who can be involved in a leadership program has to be the CEO, the president, the vice president. I think communities, I'm not speaking about Opelika specifically, but just in general, I think communities in general can reach out to some of those underserved, underprivileged individuals throughout the community and put them on boards, put them in nonprofit positions, really reach out to them, make a connection with them, really engage them in the political process of our community, in the community development, in the development of our community, because a lot of times those individuals just feel as if their voice don't matter. They feel that, you're going to make a decision regardless of what I say or do, and I kind of have to, just deal with it per se, and they feel almost as if they are outcasted and not able to actively participate. And I know it's hard, but in my opinion, diversity is everyone's responsibility. Just like leadership, it's everyone's responsibility. I think Jess said earlier, you see something, say something. Well, if you see something or if you hear about something, let someone know, hey, that was wrong. You should not have done that. If you are facilitating a meeting, and I know it's hard, we know it's hard, right, to get people here, but we got to keep trying. We got to keep going out. We got to keep trying to work with those individuals because they are a valuable part of our community, and we want them to feel, we want them to know that they are a valued member and that they are appreciated, and that we need for them to be more involved, to be more engaged in the process of developing our community. Yes, ma'am. You had something?
Jesse, have the.
Just. It's on. We can hear you.
Okay. I just think oftentimes we, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, we judge people from where they live. Or I've had an experience recently to go into some places that, I don't normally go. And there is so much in Opelika that we don't even know we have because of where people live and their income. And if we don't reach out to these people, if we don't go where they are, as a school counselor and parent coordinator, I had to try to bring parents in to the school for meetings so that we could improve our school. The only thing that really worked was when we allowed parents to influence other parents to come in. They trust each other.
They do.
And if you don't trust somebody, you're not going to go where they are. So if we could single out some people in various neighborhoods who is well trusted by their community, their neighbors, I think that's a start.
Okay.
We have this character program in Opelika,
Yes, I heard about that.
but character starts at home. And we can do character education all day long. We did it. But if the parents don't have those same values, we're just spinning our wheels.
Miss Beatrice, we need to work with you and Shane, Captain Healy, to get into those neighborhoods and find those people, because that's one of the things we want to do with the new Together Opelika, is to get into the neighborhoods, out of places like this and into neighborhoods. So
Right.
we might let you be the line leader in helping us find those people. That's what happens when you speak up.
That's what we need to do, but I don't know if I'm the person. I'll do what I can.
So you just put the idea out there. You didn't volunteer, right? Okay. Well, hey, we have time for about one more comment, one or two more quick comments. Anyone else?
Just
Oh,
speaking,
sorry. Go ahead.
just speaking on what she just mentioned, and we have to have the mindset of, I'm going into, because I value you, not to fix you.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And that I'm going to, to accomplish what we need to accomplish, we may have to do some empowering, to empower the people that we're, and even with ourselves, things that we would have to learn. But I will receive you better if I feel like you really value me and you want my opinion and you really want me, not that, oh, okay, we're going to come in, do a little quick fix and fix you, and then I can check that off my list and I can go on down. So if we can show people that we really value them, we want them, not that I'm trying to fix you.
Fix you, yeah. You're already good. We actually need your help.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Haven't heard from you tonight, sir.
I think one thing that's really important, and I work with nonprofits day in and day out, is we do a lot of strategic planning and its vision and mission and making sure that we have actionable items and something that's tangible, data to go off of and work harder and do better. I think we all have different visions of diversity and inclusion. And I think together, you know, with all the listening sessions, I think it's important to have a vision at the end to where we can all collectively say, this is the goal that we're reaching towards, this is what we want to achieve. And so we're all working off, you know, together at the end of it. I think that's just incredibly important, so we are all kind of in the same boat and rowing in the same direction.
Yes, good point. And those are our intentions, kind of take all these collective thoughts and to present them to the mayor and the city council.
I do have new gloves.
New
One-
gloves?
New gloves, you know, I have new gloves. One thing going forward into the rest of it is I know that we're talking specifically about like black-white for this meeting, but I think one thing to also consider in terms of all diversity and inclusion is to consider LGBTQ and have them in forefacing. And I know sometimes that's controversial when we have had so many people who have been so God and Jesus focused here, and sometimes that gets hairy when you say, you go against what I believe. And as a Christian, I'm on the level. I'm not going to get like heavy on it, you know, of what I think, but they have value as a person.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that, or someone of the Muslim faith, or someone, if they have a faith different from you, is that a point where we're going to argue with them? Or in Opelika, are we going to make them feel like they have a place here as well? And I think diversity goes even further than that.
Sure.
And some of those things that I just mentioned may be even more uncomfortable than African American and white people in the South here. But I think it's something worth maybe just putting in the back of our head when we're going in the next 5 issues of how we're making sure that everyone feels comfortable and welcome and valued in what they have.
We'll take it. All right? Anything else? If they wanted to make some additional comments, Lee, is something set up on the city's website to do that?
We can put something up for them to do it, or it probably is better if you just email me. It's L Kraling, and that's KREHLING at opelika-al.gov. We will post that out on social media so that people have our contact information.
Okay, very good. Well, hey, you all have been wonderful. This has been did you have something you wanted to say? I'm sorry, I just wanted to say something very quick.
It just kind of goes along with what you just mentioned, sir, about having the vision. But having the vision, yes, that's very important, but I feel like we should actually have some action steps and some accountability, because I've sat in on quite a few different meetings and there's a lot of talk going on. And I know we all mean well, and I know we're all busy, but this is so important to the progress of our city that I feel like we need to have some tangible action steps and some accountability, and come back and measure it, see where we stand, how far have we gotten, so that we can definitely become successful in our efforts, because we've made some great strides, but I just want to make certain that we have some action steps and we see the success that we're all striving to have.
Oh no, this is just the beginning. When we approached the mayor and the city council, again, this was kind of like a ground level. And then based off of this, you know, they will determine how we want to move forward. But I know personally, they specifically said they wanted to hear from the people. And so this is just the beginning. And then, like I said, we'll develop a report, submit it to the mayor and city council, and then they'll, move forward as they need to, based off of the recommendations and everything that they have access to. So yeah, that's totally our goal. This is the beginning. You know, discussion is great. We'll all agree discussion is a starting point. It's not an ending point. Eventually, we would like to have some type of actions taken to accomplish some of the things that we have discussed here tonight. So just the beginning. So I appreciate that comment. Well, hey, like I said, it's not always easy. You know, talking about diversity, talking about race, talking about different backgrounds, cultural, but I think personally it makes us stronger as a people. It makes us stronger as a community, because again, diversity is going to always be with us. And I just feel that it's everyone's responsibility. And I always like to end this with, we've talked about the things regarding, on a national level, the city level, but look at yourself and ask yourself this one question. What can I do? What can I do to improve the diversity of my community? And I think if we'll start there and kind of work our way out, especially to those people that I call your circle of influence, I think we'll start to see some real changes in regards to diversity in our community if each of us are individually committed to doing so. I think that'll be very important. I think you all should give yourselves a big round of applause. Great discussion.
Thank you all. Since you've been here tonight and you know what this is about, we have event pages for the following event listening sessions for all the other wards. Please tell your friends and neighbors they don't have to come to just their ward. If they miss tonight, they can come to another one and let their voices be heard. So please share, get it out. We need more people here. I think we had maybe a handful online. So, spread the word. Thank you.
That's exactly right.